What is up everyone, and welcome back to another tutorial. I know how long you guys been waiting for it, but today I'm going to show you a really cool trick using GSAP of implementing an introduction screen, like a cool on-hover effect for your personal portfolios to make your personal portfolios look absolutely magical. So without any further ado, I'm going to jump right into it, but we're going to do it in 4 stages. The first part, I'm going to show you guys how I secure my domain name with an SSL certificate using Hostinger. The second part, I'm going to tell you guys how you can actually put GSAP into your web page to make all this cool animation functionality work. And for those that don't know what GSAP is, it's a really extensive and advanced animation library for JavaScript. The third part is going to be writing this awesome code to make this amazing portfolio title page that will wow everyone coming to your website. And the final part is going to be me showing you guys how simple it is to deploy a website like that with Hostinger so that I can make it available for you guys to go and see and explore and check this cool effect out for yourselves. As you can see on my screen, here I have the Hostinger panel. It's super easy to manage, and as you can see, I have my devphilip.com domain, which is going to be an online store soon that will launch all my resume stuff. And then of course we have the developerphilip.com domain that we're going to be working with today. Now all I need to do is go into the SSL certificate, then I just need to set up this lifetime SSL that's already included in one of the packages with Hostinger. Then I select developerphilip.com domain to install this SSL, and I just click install. Now this SSL will be automatically installed, so I'll just close this. Here we can see that it's installing, but actually if we just refresh the page, and you can see that this lifetime SSL is active. So if we actually go into my developerphilip.com domain, what you'll see is here, right in the left corner, the connection is secure. So that SSL has been added immediately, it's available for you, and your page is secure. Now with Hostinger, you have many hosting plans that you can use, but of course I would recommend the premium shared hosting as it gives you that free SSL, it gives you a free email, you can manage up to 100 separate websites, and obviously they also give you a free domain name that you can set up, which is also super fast to do. So if you were to pick, I would go for the premium shared hosting, and if you use the promo code in my description, it will be up to 91% off for that year for you guys. So make sure you jump onto that offer as it's really good. Once you selected your plan, just pick the time period of your choice. Click on have a coupon code, enter the coupon code Filip, and you're all set to go. Now for the second part, which is actually installing GSAP into your application, you can just go onto greensock.com/install, and this is the page that's basically going to guide you through the installation setup of GSAP. But actually, if you just click on CDN, you'll get this script tag right here, which you can import at the end of your body tag in your HTML, and that will make this whole JavaScript library available in your project. For this tutorial, I'm going to code in CodePen, so here you can actually check out CodePen as well if you would want to do that, and then you can fork the GSAP starter pen right here, and that's exactly what I did. So you'll get this GSAP package installed already, and then it'll be easier for me to showcase how I code everything without switching screens all the time from my code to the actual web browser. Right, so as you saw in that beginning example, we have these 3 different circles that are actually moving about. And then we kind of use this CSS effect to apply this kind of background transformation, which you'll see later, and I'll explain it, to add that cool effect. Of course, as you can see on the screen, we have our body tag. So inside this body tag, we're going to create those shapes first, and then we're going to add and change our cursor. And then of course, we're going to add our text. So everything starts to work together nicely. So the first thing I'm going to do is create this div tag with a class named shapes. And I'm going to, whoa, what's happening? And I'm going to close this div tag, and that should be closing. And inside, I'm going to create another div tag for each one of our specific circles. And I'm going to give it a class of shape, and I'm going to give it a class of shape1 to kind of distinguish between them. And then we can just copy and paste this 2 more times. And we'll call this shape2 and shape3. Now this will be all the HTML for this specific section when it comes to creating those shapes. So now we'll move on to the CSS and actually give it some spice. I guess we can call it, give it some spice. Okay, here of course I'm working with CSS, but I'm using the SCSS preprocessor. If you guys watch my tutorials, you'll be familiar with the fact that I use this quite often, just because it makes writing the code and understanding CSS much easier, as we're following that same HTML structure. Now, of course, I'm going to start with the body tag. And the body tag, we kind of want to eliminate all the default margins and padding. So we can say that margin will be 0 and padding will be 0. Now, also, I'm going to add a font family. And I'm going to add, what was it called? Montserrat. I kind of like this font. And then we're going to default to sans serif. So if Montserrat isn't available, we'll just use sans serif. Now also, I'm going to apply a font weight, which means how bold we want the text. And 900 is one of the values available for Montserrat. And I believe Montserrat is a Google font. Correct me if I'm wrong, I can't remember. Okay, now what we're going to do is, obviously later on we have to remember that we're going to be working on the cursor. So we want to remove every single functionality from every single div object that we're going to have on our page and just eliminate any kind of default functionality of the cursor, because we're going to be customizing the cursor ourselves, right? So actually we're going to do anything in the body and everything to have a cursor of none. And that kind of just eliminates having any kind of default values referring to the cursor. So now, as we saw before, we're going to start working on the shapes and the shape, and we're going to do some really fancy SCSS that you guys might have not seen before, but hopefully you'll learn something really nice and cool today that you can use in your future projects, or exactly in this case of writing this really cool on-hover title functionality for your portfolio websites. So firstly, we're going to refer to the shapes class, and we're going to give this a position of relative. Now, of course, the position will be relative to the screen. So then obviously we need to give it a height of 100 viewport height and a width of 100 viewport width to tell the browser that we're spanning the whole height and width of the browser page. I'm going to give this a background, and I have a really nice background written down, and it's 2128BD, and it should be a nice blue background. And then I'm going to make sure that whatever the circles, if they do overflow, we're not going to get any scrolling. So overflow will be hidden. Now, if I save this and I run this pen, it should just change everything to the color blue. And that's exactly what we want to happen right now. Now we're going to start working with the shapes, which are the divs inside our, Now we're going to be working with the div. Now we're going to be working with the div, which has a class of shape and shape dash a number, so any specific index. That was confusing. Okay, so we're going to refer to the shape class, and here we're going to give it a CSS property of will change, meaning that will this shape change in any way? And we're going to tell our browser that yes, this shape is going to transform. The next thing we're going to tell our browser is that the position of each shape is going to be absolute, meaning that they can move freely in this relative wrapper container or relative parent that we're kind of referring to. Then I'm going to give each one of these shapes a border radius, if I can spell it correctly, of 50%, meaning that we're going to, instead of having a square, we're going to have a circle. Now this is when we get to the fun part. With SCSS, so that preprocessor for CSS, we can actually specify variables and we can create for loops. Now, I know this sounds quite strange to you guys, but CSS, or SCSS in this case, is actually a very powerful preprocessor. So all of these things you can actually do, and I'm going to show you guys how they are done right now. So of course, each one of our shapes is going to have a specific color, each one of the circles, and they're going to have a size. And then obviously we want to apply those CSS colors and the CSS widths and heights to those circles. And we can just create a for loop in SCSS. So watch closely. We're going to create a variable called shapes. And here we're going to create somewhat of an array or a list of key and value pairs of the shape color and their size. So in this case, I'm going to refer a circle, or I'm going to give one circle a color of some kind of blue that I have written down, which is quite nice, FFE. And then here I'm going to say that this circle will be 650 pixels. now I'm going to put a comma and I'm going to create another key value pair. So another color, which is FFE5E3, and the size of the circle will be 440 pixels. Now the last key value pair will be a color of FFCC57 and a size of 270 pixels. Right there. So this is our kind of list of key value pairs. Now we need to map over this list. We need to iterate, create a for loop, and apply each one of those styles to each one of the circles. So what we can say is that for each color and size in, and sorry, the size should be a $sign because it's a variable, in the shapes kind of variable that we created earlier, and we open up curly brackets, and we can say that for every following shape kind of child class of some index, so we can specify it like this, and then we can open our curly brackets, say that we have some index, which in this case has a reference to shapes, where we provide a color and a size variable, right? I hope you're following along. We can give a background color of color. We can say that the width of the circle will be size. We can say that the height of the circle will be equal to size that we specified in that array. And we can say that the margin, and the reason we need a margin is because we want our cursor to be right in the center of the circle. Now, everything that's position relative, it kind of falls in the top left corner. So we need to kind of make sure that whenever those circles will follow our cursor, they're going to always align in the very center of the circle. So basically our margin, and we're going to go around clockwise, we're going to start at the top, which is going to be the top. We need to go halfway down the circle. So we can say that the top will be minus size divided by 2. Then our right and bottom margin values will be 0. And our last will be also minus size divided by 2. And that's basically what will make our circles. So if I save this and I'll run it, nothing happens. And why does nothing happen? We made a mistake somewhere. So for each color, size, and shapes, refer to each shape class with index shapes. Color, okay, so where we specified the color and the size values of what we're basically passing, there is no comma here. It's just supposed to be those values on their own. So now if I run this, that should fix the error. And of course, there you go. You can see those shapes in the corner, but nothing is happening. They're not following the mouse, right? They're not moving after the mouse, but we want them to happen. And this is where the GSAP will come in. So now we will jump into the JavaScript, and we're going to actually code some JavaScript to add this GSAP functionality. What will happen here is we have to refer to the mouse move event for those circles to follow and tell them, or specify that specific class for those shapes to follow our mouse. So we can say document.body.add event listener. And in this event listener, we're going to listen to our mouse move event. And we're also going to pass an event value. We'll add a semicolon. And then inside here, we're going to create two constants. One constant will be for the mouse X positioning, which will equal to the event.clientX, which is currently where the mouse is located in the browser window. And then we're going to have a constant for mouse Y, which will equal to event.client Y. Correct, you got it right. Okay. Now, here is where the really cool GSAP functionality comes in. We can refer to the library GSAP, and then here we can call the to function, where we're going to pass in the class that we're referring to, which is shape. As you can remember, shape is each one of these little circles that will technically, or are supposed to, follow our mouse. So we're referring to each shape, and inside this function, what we're going to say is that the x positioning is going to equal to mouse x, then that the y position is going to equal to mouse y. And then we saw that little delay, or when we move the mouse and the circles kind of follow along to the mouse and they have this delay. So we can add a stagger, which is equal to minus 0.1. Now if I just save this and then I run the code pen, what you will see is that now wherever I move that mouse, we'll get this nice delay, and those circles are kind of following our mouse to the positioning of where we want it to be, right? Those are the circles done. This is basically what's going to happen in the background. Now we need to work on the cursor to make it look all nice and fancy. And we'll use a really cool CSS property to bring this all to life. And you'll see where this comes in. So now we're going to refer back to our HTML. And inside our body class, we'll add another div, and we'll give it a class of cursor. And that is all for HTML. Thank you. Okay, now we jump onto the CSS. Okay, and here we're going to refer to the cursor. Now I'm just going to refer to the cursor before the shapes, just to keep it in order with the HTML. So here we're going to refer to the cursor class. And we're going to add the following properties. And I've spelled cursor wrong, but now I've spelled it right. The first thing, we're going to say that the positioning of the cursor will be fixed. Then we're going to give it a background of whatever the blue background we gave here. So it was 2128BD. Now, obviously, we want the cursor to be a circle, and obviously we'll have to give it a width and a height, and then the border radius. So a width, and I think 20 pixels will look nice. Height of 20 pixels, a border radius of 50%. You guessed it, correct? And now, obviously, because the mouse cursor will appear in the top left corner, in the same way we did before, we have to include a margin, and then we're going to give it a minus 10 pixels, which is half of the width from the top. Right and bottom will be 0, and left will be minus 10 pixels. So now we have centered everything in that specific div. Now we have to add a will change property, which is also transform, and then we'll add a user select property of none because it's a cursor. It's just to remove that default functionality. We'll add a pointer event property of none. And my spelling is terrible today. And then we'll give this a z index of some arbitrary crazy value like this, of like 10,000 in this case, just to make sure that the cursor is always above anything on our web browser page. Okay, and this is basically it. So if I actually run this pen, we don't see the cursor yet. Why do we not see the cursor? Cursor, did I spell cursor wrong? Sir, no, that's right. Ah, because pointer, it's not pointer event, it's pointer events. Right, and let's run this. And now actually we have a cursor, and it's right in the top corner, right here. Because we want the cursor to follow, we also have to write some more JavaScript GSAP functionality for it to kind of follow the event of the X and Y positioning of our current cursor. So we're going to go to our GSAP, and then here we're going to say gsap.set, and here we're going to refer to the cursor class. And inside we're going to say that the X positioning is mouse X, and the Y positioning is mouse Y. Save this, run the pen, and as you'll be able to see, now our cursor moves, and now all of the circles kind of follow behind it, which is super awesome. So what do we have left? Well, now what we need to do is actually remember about including the content, remember include this H tag, and then make everything fall into place. So back to our HTML, we're going to add another div, class, and we're going to give it a class of content. Now I'm going to close this div, and inside I'm going to include a h1 tag, and I'm going to close it. And as the value inside the h1 tag, I'm going to put hello there with a nice exclamation mark. And that's what we're going to do. So here is where the kind of cool stuff starts happening and everything starts falling into place. I'm just going to scroll down. And I believe, yes, just underneath here, we're going to refer to our content class. The position of our content will be absolute. We're going to declare the top as 0, the left as 0, and then we're going to give it a display of flex. We're going to position this h1 tag horizontally and vertically. So everything inside content is going to be positioned right in the center. So justify content. Oh my God. Content. Wow. Center. Oh my God. Align items center. So everything will be in the center. Now, obviously this content needs to have a height of 100 viewport height and a width of 100 viewport width to make sure that it actually spans the whole page of the browser, because this content is irrelevant of all the other divs. That's why it also had to have a position of absolute. And then I'm going to give it a background color of white. And finally, this is where the magic starts to happen. There's a property called mixed blend mode. And it's a property that refers to the child and the parent element, and it just blends those two elements together. Now, it's very hard to explain, but you'll see what will happen and you'll understand how these elements blend. So you'll see how all of these circles kind of blend with whatever the content is and how it actually happens. So this mixed blend mode for this CSS property will have a value of screen. So we're kind of blending on that screen level. So if I save this and I run the pen, everything becomes white, and this text here, obviously, as you can see, whatever is happening in the background is popping through the text. Now, just to add a final touch to this, we're going to refer to the h1 tag. We're going to give it a color of black, just because we, for example, don't want it to be a default of blue. When we take our mouse off, we're going to give it a margin of 0 because h1 has a default margin. And then we're going to give it a font size of like 10 EM. Now let's save this. Let's run this pen. And voila. This is our final result. And as I move my mouse along, everything changes color. And it looks absolutely awesome, and it's absolutely magical. I really love this effect. I think it's super cool. You can include many really cool colors, you can experiment with the shapes, and you can really experiment with this mixed blend mode to make everything come into play. So I'm super excited to see maybe some of the things that you will guys kind of come up with and how creative you can be with this. Now, of course, for the final part, I want to show you guys how I actually deploy this and how I put this online, so you guys will be able to follow along and play around with it for yourselves. Now, it's actually really simple with Hostinger. All we have to do is go into our hosting. Then obviously here I will go on to managing my developer filip.com domain. I need to scroll down to importing a website, and right here is where you choose your file. Now, of course, before you import your website, you actually have to zip it. So if I direct myself to the repository where I actually have all my files, which will be here under GSAP text hover, and here is my CSS and my index.html folder, I can just click this and I can compress and I get this archive file. Now, what I can do is I can choose a file, then I can select this file once I found it, and I can open it up. Then I can just import this website. It's going to think for a little bit. It's going to import that website. And then file upload successful. And I can just click go to website. And it's actually there. You can see that my website under developerphilip.com, which we have previously secured with an SSL certificate, is now actually showing this "Hi, I'm Filip" that I have kind of moved to my directory and I've exported from CodePen. So actually this is super easy and simple to do with Hostinger, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Now, of course, if you did, make sure you smash the thumbs up button, and if you want to see more GSAP tutorials, make sure you click that subscribe button to stay in tune with all the content that I release. Hopefully a lot on GSAP, because I know you guys love it and I love it myself. But for now, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!